After my parents' death, I moved into the house I inherited from them, valued at $120 million. One day, my greedy mother-in-law, along with my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, stormed into my home. They forcefully entered and showed me documents regarding my inherited property. I was shocked to see the documents and refused to comply with their demands. My mother-in-law slapped me across the face and ordered my sister-in-law and brother-in-law to throw out all my belongings. My greedy husband stood with them, offering no support. I found myself on the street, but I decided to seek revenge. I gave them a shocking surprise. They were all on their knees. My name is Rachel, and this is the story of how I lost everything I thought I cherished and how, against all odds, I found my way back to myself. I'm 35 years old, a graphic designer living in Austin, Texas, and I recently faced a betrayal that shook the very foundations of my life. After my parents passed away, they left me their magnificent mansion, a sprawling estate valued at $120 million. I could hardly believe my luck. This wasn't just a house. It was a piece of my childhood, filled with memories of family gatherings and laughter. My husband, David, and I decided to move in, hoping to create our future there. David was 37, a software developer with a steady job. We believed that the house would be the perfect setting to start a family and build our lives together. I dreamed of painting the walls, decorating the rooms, and filling the halls with the sounds of children playing. It felt like a dream come true. But shortly after we moved in, things took a turn. David's family had always seemed eager for money, especially since they learned about my inheritance. At first, I didn't think much of it. I believed family was important, and I wanted to share my good fortune with them. However, their curiosity quickly transformed into something darker. One afternoon, I was sketching ideas for a new project when I heard loud voices coming from the front door. I looked up to see David's mother, Linda, barging in with my sister-in-law, Emily, and brother-in-law, Mark. Their expressions were grim, but I couldn't understand why they were here, uninvited and unannounced. "Rachel, we need to talk," Linda said sharply, her tone leaving no room for discussion. "What's going on?" I asked, feeling uneasy. "We've got some documents here that you need to see," Emily added, a smug smile creeping onto her lips. My heart sank as I took the papers from them. They were fake, poorly crafted attempts to claim ownership of my home. I felt the color drain from my face as the reality of what they were trying to do hit me. "What is this?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "You can't just claim this house as yours." "Oh, but we can," Mark chimed in, crossing his arms. "According to these documents, this mansion belongs to David's family now. It's time for you to vacate the property." I looked at David, hoping he would stand up for me. But he just stood there, arms folded, his expression blank. "David, please say something," I pleaded, but he remained silent, a stone wall of indifference. "Rachel, this is for the best," Linda said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "You'll be happier with us, making the decisions. You don't need this burden." I felt a surge of anger. This is my home. I'm not leaving. I won't let you take it from me. That's when Linda's expression darkened. In a fit of rage, she lunged at me and slapped me across the face. I staggered back, shocked. My heart raced as I struggled to comprehend what had just happened. "Are you really going to stand there and let her speak to us like that?" Emily shouted at David, her face twisted in anger. Mark, emboldened, began to grab my belongings, my sketches, my personal items, and toss them out of the house. "You heard Mom. Get out," he yelled. I felt utterly powerless as my life was being thrown away before my eyes. "David," I cried out, desperation creeping into my voice. "Please help me." But instead of stepping in, David remained frozen, as if paralyzed by his family's aggression. His silence cut deeper than any blow. I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak as I realized he was siding with them. "Enough," I shouted, my voice echoing in the chaos. "Get out of my house. You have no right to do this." Linda stepped closer, her presence oppressive. "You think you can just keep all this for yourself? This belongs to us now. You're just a guest in your own house." As the reality of the situation sunk in, I felt the walls closing in on me. I could hardly breathe. The place I had called home was being stripped away, piece by piece. Rachel, this isn't worth it, David finally spoke, lacking conviction. Let's just talk about this later. Talk about what? You're letting them bully me into leaving my home. I snapped, feeling a wave of betrayal wash over me. It felt like I was losing everything, the house, my dreams, and even my husband. The confrontation escalated. Linda grabbed my arm, and I jerked away, furious. Don't you dare touch me, I yelled, feeling the weight of their greed crashing down on me. In that moment, I knew I had to stand my ground. My entire life felt like it was being taken from me, and I wasn't going to let it happen without a fight. You will not take this house from me. I won't go quietly. Mark laughed, a cruel sound. You think you can fight us? You're all alone here, Rachel. David is with us. Tears of frustration filled my eyes as I looked around at the chaos. My belongings lay scattered, and the home I had envisioned filling with love felt like a prison. I'm not alone, I said, my voice strong now, fueled by determination. I have the law on my side. You can't just barge in here and take what isn't yours. Linda stepped back, her smug demeanor faltering for the first time. You really think you can do this? You'll regret this, Rachel. The confrontation that day was just the beginning. I felt a fire ignite within me, and I vowed to fight back against their betrayal. I wasn't just fighting for my home. I was fighting for my identity. The battle ahead would be long and arduous, but I was determined to reclaim what was mine. The days that followed that fateful confrontation felt like a blur. I wandered through the mansion. The walls that once echoed with laughter now seemed to close in on me, suffocating me with memories of better times. David remained distant, retreating into himself, leaving me feeling more isolated than ever. I desperately wanted to reach out to him, to ask for his support, but every time I tried, he would brush me off, saying he needed time to think. One evening, as I sat in the living room staring at the chaos that had unfolded, I decided I had to take matters into my own hands. The thought of losing my home, my sanctuary, was unbearable. I couldn't allow my in-laws to take what was rightfully mine without a fight. I picked up my phone and called a lawyer. Hello, this is Rachel. I need help regarding my property, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The lawyer, a calm and collected man named Mr. Johnson, listened carefully as I explained my situation. Rachel, it sounds like you have a strong case, he said. You need to gather all your documents and any evidence you have of ownership. We'll need to act quickly to prevent them from moving in permanently. With renewed determination, I spent the next few days gathering everything I could, my parents' will, property deeds, and anything that could prove my ownership of the mansion. I also documented the confrontation, detailing the events and the threats made by David's family. Each document felt like a shield. I was preparing for battle. When I met with Mr. Johnson again, he assured me, we can file for a restraining order against them to prevent any further harassment. It's crucial to establish your right to the property legally. Feeling empowered, I agreed. That evening, I returned home to find David sitting silently at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. I took a deep breath and approached him. David, we need to talk. I'm taking legal action against your family. He looked up, his eyes widening in shock. Rachel, don't do this. It will only make things worse. They're trying to take my home from me, David. I can't just sit back and let that happen, I replied, frustration bubbling to the surface. He shook his head. You don't understand. My mother is not someone to cross. She'll make your life miserable. I could feel my heart racing. She already has. This is my life, David. You should be on my side. He stood up abruptly, running his hands through his hair. I just need time to think. You're pushing me away. I felt a deep sense of betrayal wash over me. I can't wait any longer. I have to fight for myself. David turned and walked away, leaving me feeling defeated. I realized in that moment that I was truly alone in this battle. But instead of despair, I felt a flicker of resilience ignite within me. I had to be my own advocate. No one else would fight for my rights. The following week, I filed for the restraining order against Linda Emily, and Mark. The court day was set, and I spent hours preparing my case, going over my notes, and mentally preparing for what was to come. I knew this would be a crucial turning point in my life. On the day of the hearing, I arrived at the courthouse, my heart racing. I wore my best suit, trying to project confidence despite the anxiety swirling inside me. As I entered the courtroom, I spotted David sitting with his family, their faces a mixture of anger and disdain. I took a deep breath and walked to my side of the courtroom, feeling the weight of my decision pressing down on me. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. I stood as I presented my case, detailing the invasion of my home and the threats made against me. After I finished speaking, I glanced at David, hoping for a hint of support, but he remained stone-faced. I felt my resolve strengthen. This was about more than just a house. It was about my identity and reclaiming my life. When the judge ruled in my favor, granting the restraining order, a wave of relief washed over me. I had taken a stand, and it felt powerful. As I left the courthouse, I realized that I was no longer just a victim of my circumstances. I was ready to fight for my home, my life, and my future. Despite the small victory, I knew this was far from over. I still had to confront David and his family. I needed to prepare for the battle that lay ahead, but I felt a sense of empowerment coursing through me. I was ready to reclaim my life. After the court ruling, I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. The restraining order was a significant step, but I knew the real challenge lay ahead. David's family would not take this lightly, and I prepared myself for the inevitable confrontation. The tension at home was palpable. David avoided me more than ever, as if he were trying to distance himself from the conflict. I often found him staring out the window, lost in thought. It hurt to see him so torn between his family and me. Still, I had resolved to stand my ground. One evening, I heard a knock at the door. My heart raced as I peered through the peephole, only to find David standing there, looking disheveled and anxious. I opened the door cautiously. "David, what do you want?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. He stepped inside, glancing around nervously. "We need to talk," he said, his tone serious.
"About what?"
"Your family's latest scheme," I replied, crossing my arms. "Rachel, I'm trying to understand what's happening. My mom is furious. She said she'll do whatever it takes to get that house," he explained, his eyes pleading for my understanding. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. "David, this is my home. I'm not going to let them take it from me. You need to stand with me, not them." "I don't know if I can do that," he admitted, his voice trembling. "You don't know what she's capable of." "Then why did you marry me?" I shot back, feeling the anger rise within me. "I thought we were a team. I thought you loved me." He hung his head, clearly conflicted. "I do love you, Rachel, but family is everything to me. I can't just turn my back on them." In that moment, I felt a sharp pang of betrayal. "So, you'll choose them over me? After everything that has happened?" Before he could respond, I heard a loud crash outside. We rushed to the window and saw Linda, Emily, and Mark standing on the front lawn, angrily confronting a group of movers. My heart sank as I realized they were trying to move their things into my home, disregarding the restraining order completely. "David, they're breaking the law," I yelled, my heart racing. "We need to call the police."
"No."
"Don't do that," he shouted, panic in his voice. "It'll only make things worse." "Worse than this?" I demanded, incredulous. "They're trying to take over my house." As I reached for my phone, David grabbed my arm, his grip firm but desperate. "Please, Rachel, just give me a moment to talk to them." I was torn. On one hand, I wanted to let David handle it. On the other, I was done waiting. "No more talking, David. This ends now." I dialed 911, my heart pounding as I explained the situation. The operator assured me that help was on the way. As I hung up, I turned to see David's family still arguing with the movers, their faces flushed with anger. I felt a surge of adrenaline. "You are not welcome here," I shouted from the porch. "Get off my property." Linda turned to me, her eyes blazing with fury. "You think you can just kick us out? This is our home too," she spat, her voice dripping with disdain. Just then, the sound of sirens filled the air, and I felt a mix of relief and fear. I was finally taking a stand, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this confrontation could turn violent. As the police arrived, I stepped forward, ready to explain everything. David, however, remained silent, standing apart from his family, torn between loyalty and love. "Officers, they're violating a restraining order," I said, pointing to my in-laws. "They're trying to take over my home." The officers moved in, assessing the situation. I could see the frustration on their faces as they dealt with the chaos unfolding before them. "Ma'am, do you have documentation for the restraining order?" one of the officers asked. I nodded and quickly retrieved the papers from inside the house. As I handed them over, I caught a glimpse of David's face, a mix of regret and worry. I knew this was a turning point, not just for me but for our relationship as well. As the officers spoke with Linda and the others, I felt a wave of empowerment wash over me. I was reclaiming my space, and no one could take that away from me again. The tension in the air was thick as the police spoke with my in-laws. I stood to the side, my heart racing, waiting for the outcome. I felt a mix of fear and determination. This moment was crucial, not just for my home, but for my future. As the officers took statements from everyone involved, I noticed David watching me with a conflicted expression. He had always been close to his family, and the choice he had to make was weighing heavily on him. But I could no longer wait for him to choose. I had fought too hard to let anyone dictate my life. After a tense exchange, the police finally turned to me. "Ma'am, we need to inform you that your restraining order is valid. Your in-laws cannot be on your property," one officer stated firmly. "We will ask them to leave, and if they refuse, we will take further action." Relief washed over me, but it was quickly overshadowed by the reality of the situation. Linda, Emily, and Mark were not going to give up easily. I could see the anger boiling within them, and the police were now dealing with a volatile situation. As the officers began to escort my in-laws off the property, Linda shouted, "This isn't over, Rachel. You think you can just take everything from us? You'll regret this." I felt a chill run down my spine, but I stood my ground, meeting her gaze with unwavering confidence. "You've already taken enough from me. This is my home, and you will not take it away." After a few moments, the officers managed to clear the area and Linda, Emily, and Mark were forced to leave. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of victory wash over me. I had stood up for myself, and for the first time in weeks, I felt free. Once the dust settled, I turned to David, who was still standing near the porch, his expression a mix of relief and confusion. "I can't believe this happened," he said, running a hand through his hair. "I never thought my family would go this far." I stepped closer, searching his eyes. "David, I need you to understand something. I fought for my home because it's mine. I can't live in fear of your family anymore." "I know," he replied, his voice heavy with regret. "I should have stood by you. I was just scared." "Scared of what? Your family's anger? They chose to invade our lives and threaten our future." "I deserve better than that," I said firmly, feeling the weight of our situation. "I want to support you, Rachel," he said, his voice softening. "But I don't want to lose my family either." "Your family chose their path when they decided to attack me," I replied, my voice steady. "You need to choose me now." For a moment, he looked conflicted, but then something shifted in his expression. "You're right. I can't let them control my life or ours anymore. I'm with you." Hearing those words felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. We had a long way to go, but I knew we could rebuild our relationship if we were both willing to fight for it. Over the next few weeks, I focused on restoring the mansion to its former glory. I hired contractors to repair the damage, and with each renovation, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I transformed the house into a sanctuary, a reflection of my resilience. David and I slowly began to reconnect, sharing dreams and planning for a future together. I found strength in my independence, and he learned to assert his boundaries with his family. The day I finally finished the renovations, I stood in the living room, looking around at the beautiful space we had created. It felt like a fresh start. I was no longer the victim of betrayal. I was a woman who had fought back, reclaimed her home, and rediscovered her identity. As I watched the sunset from the porch, I felt a sense of peace. I had transformed pain into strength and turned betrayal into empowerment. This house, once a battleground, had become my sanctuary, a symbol of my journey from darkness into light. I was ready for whatever came next, knowing that I had the power to shape my destiny.